Listen carefully, because what I'm about to say might explain one of the deepest secret battles of your spiritual life. Porn doesn't affect everyone the same way. For most of the world, it's just bad habit, guilty pleasure, or normal. But for those who are even slightly awake spiritually, it hits like a psychic weapon. Have you ever noticed this? The more you meditate, the more you pray, the more you work on your consciousness, the more violent porn feels to your inner world. It's not just shame. It's not just morality. It's as if something inside you knows, instantly, that this isn't just a video on a screen. It's a ritual, a psychic contract, a hijacking of your deepest spiritual energy. Carl Jung once wrote that no tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. He understood something our culture has forgotten. Sexual energy is not just biology. It is a gateway into the underworld of the psyche, into archetypes, gods, demons, forgotten memories, and ancient forces. And that is exactly why porn hits spiritual people harder. Because the more conscious you become, the more you feel what that energy is really doing. In this video, we're going to open a door that most people are terrified to even look at. We'll explore the Jungian truth behind sexual imagery, why your psyche treats porn as a symbolic ritual, not entertainment, how modern pornography hijacks the lover archetype, turns it into a shadow, and quietly reprograms your soul, why empaths, mystics, and spiritual seekers experience deeper fragmentation, spiritual dullness, and psychic noise from porn than others, and most importantly, how to begin reclaiming your erotic energy as sacred life force instead of digital fuel for the collective shadow. This is not a moral lecture. This is a map of the unseen. By the end of this video, you will understand why quitting porn has felt like a spiritual war, and why that war is not a sign of weakness, but proof that something ancient and powerful is waking up within you. Stay with me. We're going to the roots. Imagine, for a moment, a world before high-speed internet and neon-lit screens. A world where sex was not a category, but a mystery. In the temples of India, the walls were carved with lovers entwined in impossible poses, not as decoration, but as doctrine. In Taoist China, old masters whispered about Jung, the sexual essence, as a kind of liquid light that could be refined into spiritual power. In the mystery schools of Greece, the god Eros was not a cartoon cherub. He was a primordial force that bound the cosmos together. Across cultures, across continents, one truth kept surfacing. Erotic energy is fire. In the right hands, it illuminates. In the wrong hands, it burns everything down. Ancient texts rarely spoke of sexuality in a casual way. They encoded it in myths, symbols, and rituals. The union of man and woman became the marriage of heaven and earth. The orgasm became a tiny death and resurrection. The body became a temple, an altar, a portal. Plato, in the Symposium, describes a ladder of love. You start with physical attraction to one body, then realize the same beauty exists in many bodies, then in minds, in souls, in virtues. And if you keep climbing, Eros eventually leads you to the vision of pure beauty itself, the divine. In other words, sex was never meant to end in the body. It was designed as a bridge. But every bridge can be guarded or hijacked, so you find other strands of tradition, ascetics warning about fornication demons, Gnostic sects seeing the material world as a trap woven from misdirected desire, Kabbalists placing foundation, Yesod, the sexual sphere, just above the kingdom of earth, as if saying, if you lose yourself here, you never rise higher. This is where Jung quietly enters the picture. Carl Jung spent his life studying the very things modern culture laughs at: alchemy, Gnosticism, myths, tantra, the strange symbolism of dreams. To him, sexual imagery was never just sexual. It was the language of the psyche speaking in code. He used the word libido, but not in Freud's narrow sense. For Jung, libido was psychic energy itself, the raw fuel of the soul that can become art, love, obsession, enlightenment, or addiction. And images, especially erotic ones, were not neutral. They were living symbols. Jung believed we all share a collective unconscious, a deep psychic ocean filled with archetypes: the lover, the mother, the shadow, the trickster, the anima, and animus. When you look at an image, you aren't just seeing it. You're activating an archetype inside you. You're touching something far older than your personal history. Now pause and consider this. What happens when an entire civilization mass-produces erotic symbols, stripped of love, soul, and sacredness, then beams them into the nervous system of millions of people every second of every day? You get something new in history. Industrialized eros, archetypal energy on a conveyor belt. The ancients feared misuse of sexual power so much that they wrapped it in secrecy, vows, and veils. Modernity did the opposite. It laughed at the mystery, called it superstition, reduced sex to hormones and mechanics. And then, behind that disbelief, built a global market on weaponized desire. Advertising discovered that a hint of sexuality sells anything. The porn industry discovered that explicit sexuality sells everything. And science, focused on brain chemistry and behavior, mostly ignored what Jung saw, that every explicit image is also a psychic sigil dropped into the depths of your unconscious. This is why today's conversation around porn feels strangely flat. It's about dopamine, productivity, erectile dysfunction. Important, yes, but shallow. What's been forgotten is the esoteric layer, that we are playing with the same fire that priests, mystics, and magicians once treated as sacred, only now without any initiation, protection, or wisdom. And for spiritually sensitive people, those whose inner senses are already half awake, that fire doesn't just feel like stimulation. It feels like profanation, a holy technology used upside down. In the next section, we'll bring this from the realm of history and myth straight into the heart of your own psyche, and see exactly how porn entangles itself with your archetypes, your shadow, and your spiritual path. Let's step inside your inner world for a moment. Not the surface thoughts. Deeper. Imagine your psyche as an ancient temple, a vast, echoing hall lined with statues of forgotten gods, figures carved from the stone of instinct and eternity. These are Jung's archetypes: the warrior, the mother, the sage, the trickster, and among them, burning brighter than most, is the lover. The lover archetype isn't just about sex. It is your capacity for devotion, for beauty, for surrender to something greater than yourself. It is what makes you weep at music, fall in love with the stars, lose yourself in prayer, art, or the eyes of another human being. Now here is the first key. Porn doesn't just stimulate your body. It summons the lover archetype, but only a fragment of it. Picture this. You're alone in a dark room. The glow of the screen becomes a kind of artificial candle. Your breathing deepens. Your awareness narrows. You enter a trance. From Jung's perspective, this is indistinguishable from a ritual, a repetitive act charged with emotion centered around powerful images. And those images are not neutral. They are sigils aimed straight at your unconscious. The lover inside you begins to wake up, but instead of being invited into real relationship, tenderness, risk, or vulnerability, it is chained to pixels, performance, and fantasy. The divine fire of Eros is pulled down into a wire, a script, a marketing algorithm. For most people, this happens unconsciously. They feel arousal, maybe guilt, maybe nothing at all. The psyche dulls itself to survive the overload. But if you are on a spiritual path, things are different. Why? Because spiritual practice makes you transparent to yourself. Meditation, prayer, breathwork, psychedelics, shadow work. All these begin to thin the walls between your conscious mind and your deeper layers. The same way a fine-tuned palate can taste chemicals in junk food, a fine-tuned psyche can sense distortion in sexual energy. Others just feel pleasure. You feel pleasure braided with grief, with hollowness, with something off. You notice that after porn, your meditations are noisy. Your dreams are fragmented. Your heart feels slightly closed, your body slightly used. It's not imagination. It's conflict of symbols. Your soul has begun to remember sex as sacred union, as alchemy, as mutual revelation. Yet your nervous system is being trained to associate sexual charge with isolation instead of intimacy, spectatorship instead of participation, consumption instead of communion. Every session writes this deeper into the unconscious. Jung would say the archetype is being disfigured. The lover, when honored, wants to connect you to life, to art, to God, to another soul. When hijacked, it mutates into the addict. A shadow mask of the lover, forever searching, never satisfied. And this is where the spiritual person suffers more. Because you carry higher images of what love and sex could be. You've touched, even briefly, states of unity, compassion, reverence. You've perhaps felt kundalini stir, or your heart crack open in meditation. So when you then engage with porn, a split opens inside. One part of you says, I crave this. I need this. Just one more time. Another part watches like a witness, whispering, this isn't what my soul longs for. This is not it. That split is what Jung called psychic dissociation, two centers of gravity forming within the same person. For someone who hasn't yet awakened spiritually, the split is weaker. There is less inner light to contradict the behavior, fewer sacred images to collide with the pornographic ones. But for you, each session becomes a tiny inner betrayal, not a moral failure, a failure to live in alignment with your own emerging self. Over time, this creates a pocket of shadow. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is everything you don't want to see about yourself. Your hunger, your neediness, your loneliness, your rage, your tenderness even. When you find it too vulnerable to admit, porn becomes the private altar of that shadow. Not because sex is shameful, but because you're using a sacred force while pretending it's meaningless. So the energy sinks into secrecy, and whatever is secret tends to grow teeth. The more you walk a spiritual path, the brighter your conscious light becomes. And the brighter the light, the darker and more dramatic the shadow seems by contrast. That's why it feels like porn hits you harder now than it did years ago. You are not getting worse. You are becoming more aware of the real cost. You start to notice how your gaze shifts in public, scanning bodies like a catalog, how your imagination replays scenes during meditation, how real partners feel less vivid than fantasies carefully curated by algorithms. Something in you whispers, "This is not accidental. This feels engineered." And that whisper is onto something. Because we have not yet spoken about what happens when porn fuses with the collective unconscious. How countless imaginations feeding on the same kinds of images create a psychic field, an egregor that feeds back on us. Nor have we looked at how porn distorts your inner anima or animus, the inner feminine or masculine image that shapes who you fall in love with and how you receive love. Those are deeper layers of the Jungian truth, and they reveal why porn doesn't just touch your body or your habits, it touches the myth you're living. We'll go there next. That feeling you had, that this is somehow engineered, isn't just paranoia. On the level of code and marketing, porn is engineered, yes. But on the deeper, Jungian level, something else is being constructed. A kind of psychic machine. Imagine millions of people all around the globe entering the same ritual posture alone. Screen glowing, breath shallow, attention narrowed like a laser. All focusing, day after day, on similar kinds of images, emotions, fantasies. In esoteric language, this creates an egregor. A thought form fed by collective attention. A psychic organism formed from human desire. Jung would simply call it a constellation of the collective unconscious. An archetype swollen with energy. Porn, at scale, doesn't just stimulate isolated individuals. It binds them, invisibly, into a common field where eros is stripped of soul and condensed into craving. Now ask yourself, what kind of archetypal figure is being fed here? Not the sacred lover of myth, who risks vulnerability, devotion, and heartbreak, but a fragmented, voracious presence, always wanting, never satisfied. Forever looking, never truly seeing. Intimate with bodies, estranged from persons. That is the collective shadow lover, and each session is a tiny offering to this field. If you are spiritually sensitive, you don't just feel your own desire. You begin to feel the field, the heaviness, the psychic static, the faint sense that you've plugged your nervous system into something crowded. The ancients had myths for this. They spoke of succubi and incubi, night spirits who fed on sexual energy, of sirens whose songs lured sailors toward rocks, of Lilith, wild and untamed, haunting the edges of civilization. Modern rationalism laughs at these figures. Jung didn't. He suggested that the old gods and demons did not die. They simply moved into our unconscious. What the ancients described as external entities, we now experience as inner compulsions. So when people speak of porn feeling possessive, like something takes over, they're using mythic language for a very Jungian process. An archetype grabbing the steering wheel. Again, this does not make sex demonic. It reveals that sex is powerful enough to carry the faces of gods and demons alike. Now, consider how this touches your anima or animus. In Jungian terms, the anima is the inner feminine figure in a man's psyche. The animus, the inner masculine in a woman's psyche. These inner images shape what we're drawn to, what we call my type, how we imagine love. Healthy anima/animus are gateways to the soul. They inspire us to seek depth in partners, to grow, to refine ourselves. But porn trains these inner figures to become digital colleges. An inner woman or man made of 1,000 disjointed bodies, faces, positions, scripts. The anima turns from muse into search bar, an endless scroll of options, never incarnating fully in one real person. The animus turns from inner guide into director, a harsh, evaluating presence obsessed with performance and novelty. So when you meet an actual human being, with their imperfections, their pace, their unique scent and awkwardness, your inner image may quietly reject them, not because they're wrong for you, but because they cannot compete with an archetype inflated by thousands of artificial encounters. A spiritually awake person feels this as a peculiar soul pain. A sense of, why does real intimacy feel so distant, even though I'm surrounded by sexual imagery? It's as if the bridge of Eros has been diverted into a loop that never leaves your own skull. And then comes the great misunderstanding. Some conclude, porn is the problem. Sex is the trap. The only way is total suppression. They swing from indulgence to repression. But Jung, and every honest mystic, warns, what you violently repress does not disappear. It sinks into shadow and returns with a mask. So you get spiritual seekers who proudly transcend sex, while their repressed sexuality leaks out as manipulation, spiritual bypassing, or secret compulsions. The paradox is this: porn hurts spiritual people more not because they should be above desire, but because their path is actually calling them to go deeper into desire, to understand it, sanctify it, transmute it. Porn, especially in its modern, industrial form, offers the cheapest possible version of a sacred force, and your soul can feel the insult. It's like feeding on imitation light when your being knows the taste of the sun. So the task is not to wage war on your sexuality, nor to romanticize your addiction as tantric. It is to reclaim erotic energy from the collective egregor, to draw your anima/animus back from the screen, to walk the razor's edge between repression and self-betrayal. How? By turning what was an unconscious ritual into a conscious one. By meeting the shadow lover directly instead of sneaking around with it. By offering your desire a nobler temple than a browser window. In the next part, we'll move from theory to practice. And I'll share concrete ways to transform the way you relate to porn, to fantasy, and to your own erotic power, without denying your humanity or numbing your soul. Now we move from the invisible to the practical. If porn is an unconscious ritual, the antidote is not hatred or self-punishment. The antidote is to make your relationship with desire conscious and sacred again. Think of this as a change of temple. Not no more Eros, but Eros, come home. Let's walk through a few concrete practices. 1. Interrupt the trance. The 3 questions. The urge hits. That familiar pull toward the screen. Before you move, pause. Just for 60 seconds. Place a hand on your chest or lower belly and ask, out loud if you can, what am I actually hungry for beneath this? What am I trying not to feel right now? If I didn't have porn, what would I do with this energy? Don't try to be noble. Be honest. Write whatever arises in a journal. Even a few words. You're doing something very Jungian here. Shifting from being possessed by an impulse to observing it. The shadow starts to lose its invisibility. Often you'll find the real hunger is for contact, rest, validation, relief from stress or loneliness. Seeing this clearly already weakens the spell. 2. A 10-minute lover practice: no screen, no repression. Once a day. Or when the urge is strong and you're willing to experiment. Try this. Sit or lie down in a quiet space. Dim the lights. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly into your pelvis and heart in a gentle rhythm. Notice any sexual energy, tension, tingling, warmth. Don't judge. Don't force it away. Silently say, lover in me, I'm here. You don't need a screen to appear. Show me what you feel. For 10 minutes, simply feel. If emotions rise, sadness, anger, tenderness, let them. If nothing happens, that's fine. You're teaching your nervous system a new association. Sexual charge plus awareness plus breath plus presence equals sign safe. Sacred. Allowed. You are redirecting the lover archetype from the browser back into your own body and soul. 3. Active imagination. Meeting the shadow lover. This is a classic Jungian technique. Turning inner forces into characters you can speak with. After meditation or before sleep, imagine that inner temple again. See the statue of the lover. Maybe radiant, maybe cracked. Now imagine another figure emerging, the shadow lover. The one bound to the screen, restless, hungry. Ask it, what are you trying to give me through porn? What are you protecting me from? What would you need in order to relax your grip? Write the dialogue that unfolds. You may be surprised. Often the shadow is trying, in a broken way, to soothe you, distract you from pain, or offer a counterfeit intimacy. Seeing this softens self-hatred and opens space for change. 4. Guarding the temple gate's outer defenses. Spiritual work is not an excuse to ignore basic strategy. Use blockers on your devices. Don't keep your phone or laptop in bed. Designate specific no-screen zones in your home. But don't see this as because I'm weak. See it as priestly work. You're protecting a sacred site. If possible, share your intention with one trusted person. Not as a confession of filth, but as a declaration. I'm reclaiming my sexual energy. If I slip, I won't drown in shame. I'll just reach out. Shame is the glue that keeps the habit stuck. Break the secrecy. The glue dissolves. 5. Transmuting energy. Give Eros a higher channel. When the urge feels overwhelming, don't only say no. Offer it a path upward. Choose 1 or 2 of these and ritualize them. Creative transmutation. Write, draw, make music, dance. Immediately when the urge hits. Tell yourself, this piece is made of that same energy. Breath and movement. Stand, shake your body. Breathe deeply up the spine and out the top of your head, as if lifting the charge into your heart and mind. Service. Send a message of genuine appreciation to someone. Help a friend. Take a small action that benefits another. Turn raw wanting into offering. Over time, your psyche learns. When this fire rises, it doesn't have to burn me. It can cook something. None of this is about instant purity. It's about slowly, steadily shifting from automatic ritual, conscious ritual, consumption, communion, self-betrayal, self-initiation. There will be relapses. That's normal. When they happen, don't build an altar to shame. Do one small cleansing act. Breathe, move, journal, and recommit. My desire is sacred. I'm learning to remember that. In the conclusion, we'll gather these threads. Jung, eros, shadow, and practice. And ask the deeper question. What kind of human? And what kind of soul are you becoming with the way you use your sexual energy? Somewhere inside you, a choice is being made every day. Not just about what you watch, but about who you're becoming. We've walked through forgotten temples and modern browsers, through Plato's ladder of love and Jung's archetypes, through the lover and its shadow, the collective egregore of porn, and the quiet war between your higher images of love and your lower habits of escape. You've seen that porn is not just a bad habit or simple pleasure. For the spiritually awake, it is a misfired ritual, a sacred technology used without instruction, a psychic contract signed in a moment of loneliness. It hits you harder because you're not numb anymore. Your meditation has sharpened your sensitivity. Your prayers have thinned the veil. Your dreams, your intuitions, your subtle feelings are louder now. So when you pour your erotic energy into a screen, your soul feels the discrepancy. This fire was meant to illuminate temples, and it's being used to power an engine of repetition. But here is the deeper truth. The struggle itself is not proof that you're broken. It's proof that something in you refuses to be domesticated by the collective shadow. It's proof that the lover in you is still alive enough to protest. When you pause before the urge and ask, what am I really hungry for? When you sit with your sexual energy instead of fleeing to pixels. When you speak to your shadow lover rather than pretending it isn't there, you are already shifting timelines. You are moving from being a user of porn to being a guardian of eros. So ask yourself, honestly, if I treated my sexual energy as sacred fire, what would I stop feeding? What would I start creating? Who would I dare to become? If this exploration stirred something in you, don't let it remain abstract. Share your reflections below. Your resistance, your insights, your questions. Pass this to someone who might secretly be fighting the same war. And if you want to keep walking this path of shadow, myth, and awakening, subscribe and stay close. Because in the next chapters, we're going even deeper into the underworld of the psyche and bringing back more of what your soul has always known.